people overwhelmingly said, I want to do this again. It was so good to be able to talk about these things. We deliberately left our respectful conversation fairly open and addressed issues around the summer of 2020. We were really looking back kind of on the last year-ish. So the events that happened in 2020 around the murder of George Floyd, or COVID, the election, all of these things that were boiling up for people. And a lot of folks hadn't really had a chance to talk about it. So people finding that just having a space to be able to come together and sit around those tables and share and to listen and to find that, A, I'm not alone, but also I can be in a space where I can share and listen and hear things and disagree a little bit, and it's okay. So overwhelmingly a super positive experience, and definitely something that we look forward to future opportunities to do more of. People are hungry to talk about issues that matter to them and are hard to talk about, I guess. Just last night, actually, we had a conversation in our, we have a book group that started reading together in the summer of 2020 around anti-racism. And we've kind of stuck with that broadly defined, but have read a ton together, have watched videos and movies and listened to podcasts and had a lot of conversation. And last night we started talking about the desire to learn more about Christians against Christian nationalism, and introducing that and some of the concepts and principles around that with that group into our congregation. And there was a little bit of like, oh, how are we going to do that in a way that's not polarizing? And people kind of stepping up to say, no, we can do this. We've done this before. And here are some things that we can do, but also continuing to have a desire to learn the skills, to have the conversations and to practice having the conversations. So that was it was a fun moment for me to see that kind of development that has happened with a group that when it started was a little bit more reluctant to enter into conversations that might be polarizing conversations within the congregation. I would say this is the kind of work that has given me and our congregation a lot of life in the last few years. I guess it feels like 2020 was yesterday and a million years ago, but all of the things that happened, I mean, certainly locally, but throughout the US and the world and within that year. But when I think about sort of the highlights of and the life-giving moments for me personally as a pastor, a lot of them come down to the conversations that we've had, the opportunities that we've had to be able to bring people around tables in moments that aren't always comfortable, but to say, we know that God calls us to stay together in the midst of dissent, to not call it quits and go our own ways, but to continue to keep coming and to keep engaging. So I also think that there's a lot of reluctance, particularly among young people, to be part of religious communities because they think that they're not talking about the things that matter. And that is just not true. I hope that people know that there are congregations and a lot of people of faith who are saying, no, these are the things that matter to me, and here's why, and it connects to my faith because XYZ. So I make time for things like this, and partially because it's what feeds me as a pastor, but I've also seen the ways that it's fed our congregation and the people within it, and has strengthened relationships, has given people courage, has given people tools to be able to have those conversations with their family or friends that relationships might have otherwise been broken. And it's still rocky. It's not perfect by any means, but I think just the opportunity to keep saying I'm willing to, I commit to staying in this relationship, and I commit to sharing information that is true and faithful, and listening and recognizing that we all have a story to tell, and sometimes those are stories that need to have a different narrative, and sometimes they're stories that help us to learn, and to be more empathetic and more faithful at the end of the day. I mean, I would have to think long and hard, and I don't think I could come up with anyone who is not, in terms of my friends and colleagues who are not serving in congregations, that are experiencing some sort of disagreement, right? Our political world is such, and our churches and faith communities are such, that there is some sort of polarization in some way, shape, or form, right? So with that in mind, I think every pastor, clergy person, faith leader has something to gain from this. And I think it's really useful for me to be able to sit down with other leaders and hear from them the reminder that, oh yeah, I'm not alone, and to learn together in those capacities has really been powerful and meaningful for me. Thanks to Minnesota Council of Churches for your commitments and generosity in sharing these opportunities for us.